we'll just start off by trashing Bob, right? Is that how we're gonna do this one?
Yeah, I was gonna say I finally come back, and Bob decides that he doesn't like me and doesn't
Yeah,
want to
he's like, nope, nope, we're done. Yeah, I was actually trying to figure it out. I'm like, man, when was the last time I recorded? And it was Nintendo Direct, which was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I feel bad sometimes that I miss a lot, but it's just like you're. I know we mentioned this before, but you're an hour ahead of me. Bob works nights,
Yeah.
so I'm the odd man out. Where I used to be the guy that was up all night, and then like I got old and I got a dog, and now I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go for a walk with him. 3 days a week, I go to the gym after the walk with him, and then I work. We do an afternoon walk, and then I'm usually in bed by like 10. So as
You're
far
just done. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I hear
so
you. I get it, man.
especially on Sunday, it's rough.
I've got the two kids, and like you said, I'm an hour. I basically have an hour to play with. So
Yeah.
we give the audience this the secret here. We tend to try to record around 10 o'clock Eastern time in the week, which you said 10 o'clock's your bedtime. So
Yeah.
we're keeping Rich out of bed.
We do
Um,
have that. We're springing ahead soon, so we're losing the hour. So that might make things a little better for at least a week or two.
Yeah, and I've been able to kind of finagle some minutes back. I think I can start pushing things back to like 9 or maybe even 8:45 on my time. So that might help out a little bit. And then I can always try to squeeze in some random times during,
Uh,
weekends are good for me for, I know you and I did the David Crosby episode kind of the middle of the day when we recorded it, but, and that was kind of the precipice thinking about that music for this one. So I'll make kind of the quick announcement here. We've been on Apple and Google Podcast and a lot of different services over the course of this whole entire run that we've done. But for whatever reason, we were never over on Amazon or Audible, Pandora. That stuff's been taken care of. So now we're over there too. So if for whatever reason you're finding us at some point here, for whatever reason, we are searchable on those, and I think that's pretty cool because they're pretty big services. So,
oh yeah, yeah.
um,
The
uh,
more places, the better.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And I think I've got us linked over to iHeartRadio now too, which I don't know anyone that uses that, but
I God, I use that for something like it's installed. I think it was so I could get something in an office at one point. Like I couldn't get a radio signal and I wanted to listen to something.
yeah, it was like one of those things where it was like it was an option. I was like, man, I might as well.
Yeah.
um, but no, so that made me maybe got me thinking though, and we've talked about this numerous times on here. Rich is an avid music lover, and I am as well. Um, but the different streaming services that are out there, we figured we'd kind of talk on those some, and then just maybe just the different forms of media and how we really enjoy music. Whether that's through vinyl, cassette, or even digital. Maybe there's some streaming service that we just kind of fell in love with. So I don't know. Rich and I were kind of just chit chatting before we recorded, and kind of thought that might be fun. Um, so I guess we could kind of just kind of go back to the basics. Um, whenever you first really picked up an appreciation or your love for music, what was the format for you?
I wouldn't call it a love, but the first thing I remember like buying music on was cassette. I was a little too young for vinyl, I guess. My parents had records.
Hmm.
The records I had were like the book on records where you would read a page and then a chime would go off and you'd flip the page over.
Oh yeah, were they on 45s? Those
Yeah,
things?
well, they were on little things. Yeah, I don't think they actually played at 45. I think they played at 33. But yeah, and then they all switched over to cassette too. But that's like, and the first cassette I remember buying, and this is like, whew, I remember at a flea market picking up "Please Hammer, Don't Hurt 'Em."
Yes. You
That
don't.
that'd be one of the first cassettes I had because
Um,
I didn't get into good music until I got a little older. But like, no, I mean I was born in '81, so it was "Please Hammer, Don't Hurt 'Em," and of course Vanilla Ice to the extreme.
yep. Those were my first two cassettes as well.
And I picked up some Led Zeppelin because, of course, if you're a teenager, you have to listen to Led Zeppelin. And yeah, I started getting into, I guess, more rock. And again, I mean, I grew up listening to my parents' music like everyone does, so it was like
Right.
your classic rock stuff that I got into, and then I started getting into more of the heavier stuff. Um, and then when I started getting into CDs, I remember it wasn't the first CD I bought, but we got a the first CD thing we got in the house was actually a CD-ROM drive, and
Oh,
my dad
nice.
got a couple of CDs from a buddy of his, and it was Jethro Tull's original masters, so basically their greatest hits, and Meatloaf's "Bad Outta Hell," and they were the first CDs I heard. And
Nice.
then when I turned 13, I got my own CD player, and the first albums I got with that were Aerosmith's Greatest Hits Live, and I think Queen's Greatest Hits. And then when I first started buying my own music, I really got into Marilyn Manson. I was doing industrial, so Marilyn Manson, Nine Inch Nails. I had a lot of that. Pink Floyd, I started getting into, and I was working at Bradley's at the time, so I would just basically get my paycheck. They'd pay you in cash at that point. Like, they give you the check, they'd then cash out the check there, and I would buy CDs. Um, and also, what was cool when CDs finally came out. It's before we had broadband at home, but I was like one of those tech aides at the school where I
Hmm.
would go in early in the morning and download an album on their broadband, and then use their CD burner at the end of the day because it took all day to download the album to burn whatever CDs we had there, and then I would listen to that in the car on the way home.
And that's so funny. Yeah, no, it's yeah, dude, I want to hit on that real quick, what you just said. So I remember the first like MP3s downloading, and I'm not kidding you because and I've always been big into wrestling theme music. So the first ones I downloaded, and this was in the late '90s, I was, because back then the quality was so bad comparative to what it is now digitally. But I was able to fit like a song or maybe two songs on a 3.5, and thought I was like
On a
just
floppy disk.
rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, same thing. So like my first CD burner my folks had in the house was right at the cusp of 2000, and so I was able to. They had decent internet, so I was able to do the same thing. I was just using different networks like Scour and MediaFind, and was it MP3? Was it
Remember
MediaFind or
Nap
Scour was a big
Nap
one? Napster, yeah,
Kazaa Kazaa
yeah.
Morpheus, I think, was another big one.
Yeah, so I was able to just find all these, and then what happened was I started realizing that I was uncovering these random, rare tracks or this random live recording that some person had uploaded, most likely hosted on a college server that was just sitting there. And so, if you had enough seeds, you'd get it pretty quickly. But if you didn't, it'd sit on it a while. Well, I just let it run.
Mhm.
I didn't care. So I'd get all this pretty oddball stuff, and I would burn these CDs, and I'd make these mixed CDs, and I would sell them to the local record shop for $5 a piece, and they'd turn them over and sell them for 10. And after doing that for several months, they offered me a job. So yeah, no, but yeah, going back on the thing, this I don't know if your parents were radio folks or not, but I remember my mom listening to a ton of OGL 98 oldies.
We listened to 1029 and 94.1 before it was a sports station, was kind of like a classic rock station too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and mom always had a cassette in the car, so that was a big thing for me was getting a healthy dose of whatever she had. So Hendrix, Beatles, she was big on soundtrack music too. So every once in a while, I'd pop in the Ghostbuster soundtrack or
My
these.
mom's music was mostly. I remember her having. I think the album was it called Duets? It was. Who's the old hippie guy who smokes a lot of Willie Nelson? Willie Nelson doing songs with other people. So you have like Seven
Oh
Spanish Angels
yeah,
and I kind of remember that just living that and a James Taylor album. Um, and then my dad, like if I ever missed a school bus, uh, he listened to Howard Stern in the morning, so we would listen to Howard Stern on the ride to school. And then, like I said, either 1029 or 94.1 on the way back.
yeah. With as I got a little older, I would ride with my dad some more, but it was always like talk radio stuff,
Mm.
not a whole lot of music, and if it was music, it was country, but he did not like the new country stuff. Anything beyond 1970 was new to him. So um, but so it was a lot of Johnny Cash and artists that I couldn't name to this day.
Gotcha.
But no, the CD thing was huge, man. I remember my folks were kind of the same way. The first CD-ROM in the house that I can recall, um, was, gosh, it was one of those tray where you had to like pop it in the tray and it would
Yeah.
close. And yeah, I mean, it's just weird to think about. But my mom actually, when she worked at what's now the Gloucester County Institute of Technology, used to give tours over at the old Sony plant because they used to press CDs there in Pittman. And so the first CDs I have in my hands on were promotional items from there.
Okay.
So it was the one I never listened to because I still wouldn't listen to it this day. It was a Mariah Carey disc. Never listened to that one. But the one I did listen to a ton of, and I was probably 12, 13 years old, was Spin Doctors, Pocket Full of Kryptonite. And that was one that I just really, really got into.
I owned a music box. That was the only Mariah Carey album I owned.
That very well may have been it. I could tell you nothing about it.
Mariah Carey was hot in the 90s.
Yeah, I was, oddly enough, I was more interested in actually listening to good music or what I thought was good music.
Yeah.
But no, and I got to thinking, like you mentioned the first cassette tapes, and of course I was around the same age you were when Hammer and Vanilla Ice were big. That's what I remember getting. But as far as CDs, really beyond that was probably like Green Day and Rancid and the 94, 95 time frame.
Yeah, you just mentioned Rancid. I've been we mentioned listening to music at the gym before. I don't know if it was a podcast or talking, but I've been going through NoFX library now for music.
Nice.
So yeah, Pump Up the Volume and Drunken Public, stuff that I probably haven't listened to since maybe not when it came out, but after. I mean, it's all stuff that I had on CD.
And it's funny too, because having the conversations with anyone that's not in our age bracket has no clue like how big that really was. Between them, Pennywise.
I was just listening to, was it Land of the Free, whichever one had Bro Hymn on it. I listened to that this morning at the gym, and I haven't.
Yeah.
I definitely haven't listened to Bro Hymn since like 2003.
Yeah, are you talking about the tribute one?
No, this is
the actual.
Yes,
there's a Bro Hymn tribute that's on Full Circle. It's the black album with the silver.
It's not Full Circle. It was the other one.
Yeah, there was the tribute one was the one after Jason Thirsk died. I only remember that because I had the shirt and had it on the back. That was like 97, 98 time frame. But yeah, it was based off the original Bro Hymn. That's why I asked that they did. I forgot, what album was that on? Was it on Unknown Road?
I don't remember.
Golly, so we got to Google that one because, oh man.
Gee, when you Google Pennywise, the first thing that comes up is the clown.
Oh, maybe on their self-titled. Yeah, it was 91. Yeah, and then 97 was Full Circle, and they did it again there with a tribute. And that was after Jason Thirsk died. Yeah, and he was the guy that wrote it, so that's why they did the tribute one. Yeah, that is true. The first thing Google Pennywise is definitely not the band.
Yeah, it's the purple unless you write the self-titled one.
Yeah. 91. Wow, it's been a long time. I'll be honest, I haven't listened to them in a long time though.
I mean, yeah, that's why I put them. I've been looking for just fast things. Like I've been listening to a lot of Minor Threat and 7 Seconds just because I've been always listening to them. And I'm like, well, hardcore punk seems to be the thing that gets me going at the gym. So I've been trying to stick with that.
Very cool. Nah, I love 7 Seconds. I never really listened to a whole lot of Minor Threat though. I don't know why.
It's they don't have a lot. I mean, they were only around for a little bit, and their songs are only like a minute and a half max. But they're it's like the perfect thing for exercising because it's quick over, then you're on to the next thing, and it's just so fast. And I am not straight edge, but I like the music.
Yeah, there's a lot of those bands that were in that way. I don't know. So now, when you went through your punk and core phase, and we're eventually going to get to talking about streaming services, but maybe. But were you did you fall in the Jersey ska scene at all?
No, the closest thing I got in the ska was later, no doubt, is Save Ferris. I had their album, and that was about. I wasn't a big ska. I mean, I don't dislike it. I just
Right.
in a meh.
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine, big musician, who kind of took me to a ton of stuff up in North Jersey. So I got to see all sorts of interesting, fun, but a lot of it was a lot of those smaller bands ran in the same circle. So I saw a lot of core bands too. So I would see one show would be the Toasters, and the next show I'd see Orange 9mm, and it's just this crazy, like eclectic group of ska and core, or some weird mixture of both.
Gotcha.
So the Toasters, Pilfers, the Ernies, the trying to think of some of these other bands that were around that time frame. My favorites ended up becoming like One Cool Guy, which is how I derive a lot of my handles from, because they have a song called Example. But they end up turning into some other bands like Catch 22 and Streetlight Manifesto, and I kind of kept up with them as I got into college, but that scene started really fading out.
Gotcha.
So
See, I spent a lot of time at the Trocadero, and I'd go see the bigger name bands. Like I went to go see Pennywise, and Guttermouth opened for them, and I wound up really liking Guttermouth a lot and getting all of their. Like I think I bought like 3 of their CDs at the show. Like it was that good. And then I saw Sick of It All and Stretch Armstrong opened for them, and they're just a good hardcore. And I haven't listened to it forever. And then I had a friend who got me into a band called Propane. It's just a real heavy hardcore band.
is that spelled like Pain? That
Yeah.
one? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I saw H2O open for Dropkick
Okay.
back golly, probably 98 time frame. And there was another band that opened and I just could not remember who they were, but some smaller, local core or whatever they were in, two type band. But no, as far as those, like everything was just real local, so it was hard for me and I say local, probably more North Jersey local. So
Yeah.
I have a hard time remembering, some of the ones that didn't really stick with me. But that was such a good time, just lots of fun bands running around back then. And
Mm.
that's really how you enjoyed music though.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, that's what it was. You went and saw it live, or if you were lucky enough, you could get a disc or whatever at that point in time.
The the Warped Tour compilation discs were awesome too because you'd get like a little bit of everything.
I was the same way with the Punkorama discs.
Yeah.
Oh man, those were great. Those Epitaph releases. Do you ever have any of those?
No, I don't think so. But I was just I was loading purple filament in my 3D printer, and I started singing Google Bordello as I was doing it.
Nice, nice.
And that's where I heard that it was on the Warped Tour.
Those were good. And if you were into the alternative stuff at all, and it's kind of funny. It was actually MTV had the Buzzbin discs, and they were pretty good too. I had the first couple. They were excellent. They had nice mixture of like Cake and 311 and that sort of stuff that was at the time they weren't household names. They were just like breaking out in the scene really. So it was kind of cool to get their singles all basically rolled in a disc without having to like dive into an album.
Mhm.
Because again, it was different times. But kind of fast forward a little bit though. We talked about downloading music already, and I think we were all doing that through the early 2000s. But then I guess the next big thing that hit on the music scene was satellite radio, which was mid 2000s. I remember getting my first one, which was actually for my dad as a Father's Day gift. It was in 2006, if I remember correctly. So I don't know. Do you have a time frame or so about when you kind
It
of got introduced into that?
it must have been around the same time because I got mine it was actually a Christmas gift from my parents, and we got the car thing and then base station for the house, and it was cool because they had, and they still have, just like a station devoted to new wave music. They have several punk stations. It seems like it's getting a little more. Like I still have, I got it again with the newer car, and then just kind of kept it. Um, they have all those stations again, but they're playing the same songs on rotation. So if you're listening to it in the morning and in the evening, you're going to hear the same thing. And I don't remember that happening back when they first started.
No, it was really different. I mean, I had
Yeah,
XM is what I had before the merger.
merch, yeah,
That's what I'd gotten my dad, and I picked it up not too long after that. I got my own like little head unit that you basically set up and ran the antenna out onto
yeah.
the roof of the car and all that fun stuff. But the cool thing I really liked is that you got exposed, like you said, to so many different things. So they around Christmas time, like right after Thanksgiving, they would run this like crazy Christmas. It was called Special Xmas. They'd run all these crazy Christmas things, and it wasn't like your typical, I'm not listening to this Big Crosby or whatever. It was like that's how I got Dominic the Donkey. That's how I got, a lot of the Bob Rivers. That's how I got this, that, and the other thing.
Gotcha.
And it was really cool because I'd never heard, I'd heard some of it, but I never heard all that before. And then you got like these just really random holiday songs, and I just thought it was the coolest thing.
See, that's kind of how I started getting into reggae music. Was like, oh, there's a reggae station on here. I've never really listened to that. Let's see if I like it. And turns out I do. Some of it is pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, and they still have that. They still have like your typical decade stations, your 80s on 8 and 90s
Yes.
on 9 and all that fun stuff. Um, you
I, uh,
know,
I go back and forth between the 60s on 6. Um, I like the Grateful Dead. I'm a big Grateful Dead fan, so I like the Grateful Dead station. But Lithium and First Wave are two, like, just they live on the radio.
yeah, Lithium's been there since day one with satellite radio.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I gave it up. I had an open account from about '06 to 17 or 18, and then I finally canceled it just because I was just getting into further conversations. I finally got into streaming the streaming services much more. Plus, they were more cost effective for me at the time,
Mm.
and it was more of what I want to listen to because it had a very strange taste. So it was, I've never been a fan of the radio in general, mainly because I never liked pop music. So then the advent of satellite radio I thought was really cool because, well, they had this really eclectic music. And then also like listening to shows too. So a lot of Opie and Anthony, Ron and Fez, some of this sports stuff for me was big. I could finally listen to Phillies games without having to, find some weird person that's, streaming it,
Yeah.
basically holding up a microphone to their whatever, speaker, through some weird feed online. So, you had all this really cool stuff. And then I guess my own tastes and what I really wanted to kind of pared away at that. And so, the shine wore off for me. So I got away. I still have access to the online version of it. I just don't have it in the car anymore.
It came free with the car, so I'm still.
Right,
And
right,
it's
right.
super convenient too, which is nice. It's just
And I've heard they're pretty good about price point too now. So because I realized they were at a point where they were really pretty reasonable, and then it just got out of hand. Like they were trying to hit me for like $40 or $50 a month for like 2 radios, and I was like, "Yeah, we're not doing this."
yeah.
So I just kind of gave up the ghost on it. But so then I'm kind of going a little forward to kind of what I was initially thinking about talking about. These different music streaming services really started hitting too, and I think the first one that we were all exposed to was probably Pandora. Does that probably ring
That's
true for you?
definitely the first one I used. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have any like things that you remember when that first hit was like, oh wow, what this is really cool, or anything that?
It was so long ago that no, I honestly, I mean, I know I used it. I
Right.
know I had it. I never paid for it, so it was always the commercial one. And
Right.
then,
Yeah. You could listen to like
yeah,
3 or 4 songs and then play commercial and
yeah. And then I
yeah.
think you can only. I don't remember if it was that one or Spotify where you can only skip a certain number of songs too if you didn't pay to skip them.
Yeah, I remember Pandora having that, but I don't. Like I said, it's been a long time now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my first exposure for sure, for certain. And I just thought it was neat because like it was you could kind of start catering a radio station
Hmm.
to your liking, and I thought that was kind of cool. Um, that was interesting. Um, but around not too long after that, though, and this is one of the things I was thinking about the and it's now known as YouTube Music, but Google Play Music. Do you remember when that first hit? That whole thing when it first really came out was meant for a backup of your music collection. Do you remember that?
No, but if we start talking about Apple Music later, that's how that started. Was It was actually before it was Apple Music, it was Apple Match, and you would upload your MP3s, and it would either match them to ones that they had on their server, so you just had access to a better quality version or whatever they had,
Hmm.
or it would give you access to what you uploaded. Like, well, this isn't here, so we'll upload it for you.
Do you? So I'm curious now because I have never used Apple. I never used Apple Match, so I was on the other side. I used Google Play for it. Do you remember about when that was?
Jesus Christ, no, no, it was. I was well, yes, I do. It was at least 10 years ago because I was working at the law firm. I remember I was working as an intern at the law firm and I was bringing in my CDs and ripping them during that. I just sat there and ripped every CD I had so I could upload it to this new service because I had an MP3 player, but the MP3 player didn't have a lot of memory in it. So this way I could at least, pull different things down onto it.
Was that iTunes Match?
Yes, iTunes Match.
Okay, yeah, I was curious. I was curious because like I'd heard of it, but I just never used it. So I was more curious as to when. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, so the same exact time frame then. 2011 was when that was hit.
I was right. It was about 10 years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the only reason why I was I was curious because like I said, I was on the other side of it. Was Google Play Music was the same thing, came out the same year. Um, the thing that was really cool about it was didn't quite have the matching capability because it kept your catalog separate of everything else. So it had its own little existent thing out there, but then your library was in its own little world, but you could kind of connect the two. So it's like if I'm searching for something, and that was one thing Google was always really good about, was if I'm searching for a particular song, it's like, do you want to play this here? Or do you want to hear the live version that exists in your library? And so at the time, back then, you could upload up to 20,000 MP3s. So that's basically was my collection. So I was able to just throw the whole thing out there. It would do its work on trying to find like the artwork and some of the metadata for you, but you know, you and I both know that a lot of that's not clean when you try to, or especially your catalog contains all these random live things and.
Yeah, I spent so much time getting my iTunes library and like it was perfectly organized. Everything had the metadata set up correctly. I had the images uploaded for ones that didn't match correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Can't believe how much time I spent doing
I
that.
know, is that crazy?
Yeah.
I,
All for 128 kilobit a second MP3s because that's what I was ripping at the time.
and it's kind of funny. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was doing.
Yeah.
It's funny because I go back and I look at like the folder structure, and I actually stole it from somebody, and they had it like, okay, I have genre, and then I have the artist, and then I have the album, but the album's always had the year in front of it, based on the folder because I always played with things in Windows. So it was like that's how I see things, and I still see things that way now. But we'll get into our streaming service stuff here in a little bit, which obviously does not see it that way at all, for the most part. But it's just really weird how like you think you have things organized, and then when you really see how things are on a service, you're like, oh boy, no, I don't have things organized at all. But no, that's cool, man. That's the thing. I love learning stuff like that. I'd heard of it or the
Yeah,
match thing.
what was cool with that, like I said, it if you like I was ripping in 128 kilobytes a second, but I think they had 192 as their default. So if they found something that you uploaded that they already had on their servers, they would just say, "Here, use ours." So we're not taking up space. So you
Which
get
is
a higher quality thing, which was cool.
Which is so funny because I know we don't do the greatest job at quality, but I throw everything at 320 for us. You
That's
know,
probably what I would do now if I did that. But now I just set it to whatever there. I think they have lossless thing in Apple Music, so I just say play it lossless if I'm on Wi-Fi.
yeah. Whenever I do our edits, which is quite often, everything ends up in 320.
Oh yeah,
Um,
for our podcast, that's I mean we're just talking for podcasts. I think I was doing 92 when they first came out or whatever
yeah,
when I was first listening to podcasts.
yeah. I was gonna say you don't need much because there's
No,
nothing there.
yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so let's kind of in that time frame, we'll still see if we can sit in the early 2010s or mid 2010s.
I want to. I think it was probably around this time. Um, Napster, not Napster. I'm sorry, Winamp. I don't
Oh,
know if they owned it or whatever, but it was Shoutcast, or it
yes.
was streaming stations through Winamp. And I still have a CD full of. It was a show. I think the radio show was called Darkwave. It was like industrial and goth music, just a streaming. I guess today it would be a podcast, but back then it was just a
Hmm.
streaming station. They would do it like once a week.
Yeah,
And
no. So when I first actually dabbled with podcasting, I ran a wrestling. I talked about wrestling theme music, and of course, I would play the music with it. I did just that. I ran it
okay,
through Winamp, and I streamed it through, but I recorded it,
yeah.
so I was able to have it. And I uploaded to Poddango. That was the service at the time. That was back in 2008. Um,
I used to boot when Howard Stern first went to satellite too. That was before I had the satellite radio. I would bootleg it through Shoutcast, like you were saying, have people holding up like the radios. This is just people that would record and replay it
mhm.
on pirate, I guess pirate web stations. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much all they were doing back then, which is really it's actually kind of interesting, to think about. I still actually I found them, my old recordings, and I always tease Bob saying I'm going to throw some of these together and put them out there because I didn't go by my own name. It was just the funniest stuff. Like I thought I was like this random DJ, when I was in my 20s, and it's sad. you know.
No, I mean I'm glad. I guess some of the stuff you can still find on the Wayback Machine, but I had a pile of just websites throughout the years that some of them's like I'm sure I'm gonna be embarrassed about various live journals and shit.
Yeah, it's all part of learning and playing
I
with what's
know,
around,
right?
right? I mean, um, so okay. Um, with some of these services, though, did a little bit on Pandora. Um, did you do? I think the next big get was probably Spotify, as
I
far as like
probably
actual
I probably
streaming.
played with Spotify a little bit, but I think at that point I had my first well, I say my first MP3 player was a Rio. I forget who made it, but it was just a portable CD player that played MP3s off of CDs.
Oh
Um,
yeah, what was that?
but by the time like Spotify would have been out, I would have had either my first iPod or the Dell DJ, and I would have just been using that for music
Right,
and
right.
not spending the money on the streaming stuff or whatever. Or actually, I'd be giving Apple $15 a month for the Apple Match or $10 over or whatever it was. So I
So
didn't go Spotify.
you were still doing that before you were still paying for the Apple Match
Yeah, yeah,
instead
just
of like, you know what, I'm going
just
to jump into
I'd be bootlegging my music and then uploading it to the cloud or whatever.
gotcha. Yeah, the Rio, you said Rio, and I was trying to think. Yeah, I looked that up. So, yeah, early college days, I had an RCA Lyra,
Here.
which was, took a couple AAA batteries, and you had to convert everything into some obscure
Gotcha.
format that only that thing could recognize. The thing I liked about it though was that it took memory stick, so you could expand the memory,
Gotcha.
on it and put more music on it. But yeah,
I had this thing from Creative where it was literally a thumb drive that you kind of slipped into this little thing that made it look like it's about the size of a Zippo lighter,
hmm,
uh, but it only held like 3 albums maybe or something, and there was no display on it, so you had to play whatever the but it was so cool.
I had one of you know, I had one of those, that I'd gotten for free at, like, when I first started working IT. They'd given them out, like, as a door prize or, like, when I went to a conference or something. Yeah, because it had, like I said, it was about the size of a flash drive,
Yeah,
and you could pop, like it had the headphone jack in it, but, yeah, it did not hold much. I mean, it was, you know,
I still here it is. It's called the well, this is the other one. This is called the RioVolt. It was the portable CD MP3 player
RioVolt.
with 120-second anti-shock.
Oh, man.
I still have it. It's like over there in like a closet in my basement now because I never get rid of anything.
That thing's pretty sweet looking, though.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I don't know that it would do what it would do for you now, but
I remember having that in my car with one of those CD, no CD, the tape adapters where you plug it into the thing and then plug in the
yes,
tape deck.
yes. That, you know what the crazy thing is? That technology, I don't know if you've ever messed with it, but I was really curious to see, like, where that went over time. Do you know they developed Bluetooth adapters for those things?
Yes, yes, I say I've
Uh,
seen them. Yeah,
Did you ever mess with one of those?
no, no, but I watched YouTube videos of people taking them apart and just looking at them, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, I had the same thing. I used that for a bit. Uh,
There's just, I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but there's a YouTube channel called Big Clive, and he's a Scottish bear, and by bear I mean big hairy gay guy. But he's oh Jesus Christ, electrical engineer. He does like for a day job, I guess he does stadium lighting and stuff like that, and
mhm.
the lights to musics and crap. But he like basically takes things apart and like does the circuit diagrams and stuff, but in a fun and entertaining way. And I would highly recommend it. He also has this series that he's been doing lately where he takes a soda stream and sees if you can carbonate alcohol. And the last one he did was tequila. And
No
apparently, you can
kidding.
carbonate tequila. Yes,
Really?
I highly recommend.
I'll have to check that out. That's awesome. Yeah, it's just really cool. Like, that's what I love about, some of these random conversations we get into, because
Yes.
I would have thought that you and I would have talked about the Rio and the
Yeah.
the Lear and some of these other, like, random things we had over the years.
Yeah, my first
Uh,
big MP3 player though, I had my first major credit was through Dell, and I got the Dell DJ. With
nice.
yes,
What's funny that were you big on the having? 'Cause I know you're the Apple guy, but were you big on iPods and all that, or?
I couldn't afford it at the time, and I didn't start getting into Apple until my first Apple computer was again at the end of the law firm because it was like the last year I worked there.
Okay, it's about 10 years ago or so.
Yes, and I got into it because I did get into the iPhone. I got the iPhone right before that, and I'm like, well, this is cool. And we're really getting off on a tangent now. But right after I got the iPhone, I read a book called Masters of Doom, which was how the two guys created Doom and
Mhm.
ID software. And they go into a lot of things in there about shareware and how shareware worked and all this other stuff. And at the time, the Apple infrastructure just reminded me a lot of that because you could create your own, as long as you had an Apple computer at the time, you could create your own software or app for the phone and put it right out there. And, you split your, 30% goes to Apple, but then you get whatever you make from that. And I wanted to make my own thing. So I sold a pile of comics and bought a Mac Mini, and that was my first Apple computer. And obviously I really liked it. I mean, I'm talking to you now on a MacBook Pro, and
Right, 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 right.
so working the last three companies I worked for, we all used Apple. I mean, the engineering departments use MacBooks. I still run Windows when I have to for certain things, but I run it off of another partition on my MacBook. So I just
Right,
run it that way through Bluetooth.
and
Yeah,
yeah, I know we kind of went off on a path there,
yeah,
but I 99% want to do is on Chromebook,
yeah.
and now that I can run Linux apps on it, it's
Now, that said, I mean, I'm really not an Apple fanboy, but at this point, I have so much money invested in the Apple infrastructure. But I could have seen myself just as getting into like an Android or whatever if that's what I would have used first. It's just like I said,
right. Yeah, and I can't say I was ever anti. So, like, going back to the music thing, I think the only iPod that I ever had was the Nano, the small
I
one.
I had my first iPod was It was right before the one they came out with that did video, so it still looked like the first gen iPod, and this one did pictures, which was this new thing, fancy thing. And then I had a 60 gig one, so it was cool for what it was at the time. It was neat.
Yeah, the only other MP3 player that I have that was of note, I had the last edition Zune. So that's another conversation for another day. But kind of going forward into some of these streaming services now you're kind of flooded, right? Present
Yes.
day. It's an open market. You have Apple Music.
They'll cover any, like, there's genre specific ones. There's one for audiophiles. There's one like everything.
Yeah, there's one that's, there's one for everybody, right? And then some. And so whether you're an Apple person, you're a Google person, you're whatever you are, pick your flavor basically. And they all have different price points. There's some that have been around for a long time. Some still have, free offerings, and some have the paid offerings. Most of your free offerings are going to be commercial driven. So if you have free Pandora, free Spotify, free whatever, pop open YouTube, just regular YouTube, just watch videos. Obviously, your experience there is going to be very heavily driven with commercials.
Yes.
So just how it is. That said, though, now you have this like plethora of services. So are you using anything streaming music wise?
Yeah, most of the music that I listen to now, it just comes from iTunes. I have Apple's got this thing where I think it's $15. I forget exactly what I'm paying, but I get Apple TV, which I never watch, their Apple TV channel thing, their music service, and their game service, and a couple other things. But no, I mean, I listen to whatever I went through Apple, more or less, and then I use their playlists and stuff to recommend music. I also have I subscribe to whatever the YouTube Premium is, because I realized I was watching a lot of YouTube at home and spending a lot of time watching commercials. And for I don't have cable, so for $10 a month, I could get no commercials on my YouTube. So I listen to. Not that I listen to their music. I'll sit there at night sometimes, and I'll watch music videos and just put that on whatever, and I find that enjoyable.
Right. Yeah. No.
I have a couple of Grateful Dead apps that play their live music, because they have there's this whole. It used to be through tape trading where people would just do like here's this show from the Dead from '72, and here's this show from '75 at this place, and now that's all online, and you can get a lot of that for free, so I don't have to pay for that, which is nice.
That's pretty cool. Is that something that's just put out through the band, or?
Yeah, well, they let you, and there's people that do this, record right from the board. So they'll you hand them your recording device, and they'll put it into the soundboard and give you a really nice recording from it. And there's people that just traded, like I said, stuff from a lot of their shows.
No kidding. That's really cool. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. See, I'm not a huge Dead person, but
you have to like the Dead.
Yeah. There's a handful of songs, but I'm not, just one of those that I was never, That's pretty cool. That's interesting. Yeah. But you're talking about the ad-free YouTube. So I started paying for that, but I still had Google Play Music, and then eventually they rebranded Google Play into YouTube Music. So the cool thing was, and really up until I think it's going to be April of this year, for $15 a month, you could do YouTube Music, which would also enable your ads for free on YouTube. So you do get that premium service rolled in with that, and you can share it out with 6 people. Okay. So I have it, Danielle has it, I gave a account to my dad, my kids have it. So there's all these accounts that are on there that have access to it. So I'm paying $15 a month to get ad-free YouTube, which is perfect for my kids, for one. But 2, it's I have all this music. Now, the great thing was, if you were paying attention, like I was, you could take your Google Play Music catalog that you'd already uploaded and just convert it over. So all my library that I uploaded all those years ago is still there. And now it runs perfectly coincided with this catalog of music that's online.
Yeah,
That's
that's
exclusive.
exactly.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, go
I was
ahead.
going to say that's exactly how the iTunes things works now. When they finally did their, you can subscribe to this and have access to everything on iTunes for $10 a month or whatever. Because I had that iTunes Match thing first. There's actually a little toggle switch. You can say search my library or search iTunes, and then if it's my library, it's all that stuff that, like you said, that has been up there forever. So I still have like Sugar Nipples and shit that I found on Napster up there just because it's still there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I have these, like, I have gigs and gigs worth of like these old wrestling theme. There's no reason why I need 40 different versions of the Undertaker's theme, but damn right I have it.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, because I don't know Apple as much with YouTube, and it was one of my favorite features with it, and I really didn't understand it up until really about the last year or so, because I was like, I'll never bother with that. They'll take and they'll mix like things that you like, so they'll create like these little radio stations for you.
Yeah,
it's basically all stuff that you previously liked or listened to or whatever. But then they'll have this section called Discover, and it basically refreshes every Wednesday. So it's like every Wednesday I can pop on 50 songs, and I can pop through, and I usually just hit shuffle, and then I'll like, oh, this is really cool. Add this to my likes. This is really cool. Skip. Add this one. Does Apple have anything like that? Or
oh yeah, it's I imagine it would probably look exactly the same. But yeah, they have curated playlists, so they can say these are your favorite lists. This is stuff you listen to the most. This is stuff that we think you'd like based on your lists. Or as you're listening to a song, you can say, well, create a station based around this song. And we'll find other things that sound like that. Yeah, and then like you said, they have stuff you recommend. They have, I guess you'd call them real radio stations. They have like the hit stations or this or that, where it's actually DJs doing playlists too, where you can jump on there and listen to them if you wanted to. Like when I first started going to the gym, I just searched for gym playlists, like workout lists or whatever, and they had ones like, well, here's ones that'll has songs that you'll like in it, or here's one with new songs, which I didn't like because it was all new music. And apparently, I just, since we're talking about music, I just got in this discussion with my mom. My mom's like, I tried watching the Grammys and I hated all the music that was being played there. I don't understand it. It was horrible. And I tried to tell her that it's not that the music's bad. It's that you don't like music that came after where you listen from. There's a part where you're going to age out of new music and you listen to this. You can go backwards, but you can't go forwards. Right. And we had this discussion with somebody else before too, because when Billie Eilish first came out, I tried listening to her album, and Billie Eilish and Skrillex, and I'm like, this sounds like noise. I don't understand this electronica stuff, but I think that's just because it's not, not for me. It's not my music.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's bad, and it's not. I'm just saying that I don't understand it, and it's for whoever comes after, come later. Like Skrillex, I don't know why I tried to listen to that, but it was just
just noise.
Like noise. Yeah, it was. Oof.
Yeah, see, and I've always loved electronic because I was always big into like Daft Punk and a lot of stuff way before they were ever.
Daft Punk isn't bad. I can listen to Daft Punk, but then Skrillex isn't Daft Punk. Skrillex,
but look, that was my breaking by. But I mean, that I'm talking like 95, 96, time frame. I really was into it for pretty early on. I still love electronic music, but a lot of what I listen to is pretty mellow. A lot of instrumental. Very rarely do I get into anything with any kind of lyrics, any singers. If I do, it's because someone's mixed something together. Gotcha. But it was funny though that you're saying about new music. So I'd find and discover these things, and I'd be like, oh, this is awesome. This has to be new. It sounds really cool. And I go back and I look. This was within the last couple of years. Came out 2003.
Yeah.
Like I get it. It's really, really hard to find, I guess, the pop part of it, if you will.
See,
like
I don't get mumble rap, but I'll listen to NWA or Ice Cube. Like, I understand that. I don't understand this other stuff.
Yeah, there's a couple of songs I really like from a couple like Aesop Rock, but I don't like. I'm not gonna burn through an album.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just don't. don't get it. You know, a couple songs I enjoy, and it's really cool. It's like, yeah, you can say stuff really fast. That's awesome. But I like the beat, and can't go through the next song because don't have no idea what you're saying. Oh
Like
man,
I remember, like I said, just going back to the conversation was about Billie Eilish, and I think the comment I made was some of this is okay, and I'd probably enjoy this if I heard it in high school, but now I just don't get it.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
then her second album came out where it was more. It was almost like I can't think of the dead girl, the one that wouldn't go to rehab, but her second album sounds like her.
Oh, Amy Winehouse.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and I don't know what you'd call that kind of music, but it's closer to that style. It was like that's
I
a
have
little,
no idea.
yeah.
That's still too new for me. That's a shame.
She's been dead for like 20 years. But yeah, I got you.
I know, isn't that crazy? So I know. I think this is a fun way to close this one up. Is and we've talked about this, and we'll talk about it again. But I know you're big into vinyl, and I know there is nothing quite like actually just throwing something physical on. Now, granted, I typically 99% of the time will still listen to something, you know, digital or streaming service, whatever, just because it's just easy.
Mhm.
And you know, with having two kids running around, it's quite difficult at times to, you know, either A, one, own a copy of something that way, or B, just like, you know, have the time to throw something down. So um, I know it's one of your pastimes. Just throw vinyl down, get a glass of whiskey, and just enjoy. There's nothing quite like that, is there?
No, not at all. No,
Um,
and
do, do you have any good vinyls right now that you're just kind of sinking your teeth into?
well, a lot of I like a lot of classic rock, and a lot of it's turning 50. So there's just a lot of 50th anniversary reissues and remixes and stuff. Dark, I haven't decided if I'm going to buy it yet because I already have. It would be my fourth version of it on vinyl, but Dark Side of the Moon turns 50 this year. And there's a giant box set that's coming out for that. But I did just pick up Crosby, Stills, and Nash, their first album, as a 45 RPM cut. So the faster something spins or record plays, the higher quality it is.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's 45 RPM, you're only going to get like two songs aside, but they're going to be a better quality. And the company's Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab. So it's like a high end record company that's been around forever. And I spent the weekend with my mom, and I picked it up. Well, we went to a flea market that had like an inside record store, and she was there when I bought it. She was like, "You're really not going to spend that on that record, are you?" And I said, "Yes, I am."
You darn right I am.
Yeah, so I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm looking forward to listening to that. And then we were just talking about 7 Seconds. They've been redoing their whole library, and the second one of them just came out. The one that I don't remember, The Crew came out a couple months ago, and that was a good album. This one I don't remember the name of, but it's the one that's got their cover of 99 Red Balloons. So I'm
Okay.
looking forward to listening to that. But again, and we mentioned this on a couple of podcasts. I really like Tea for the Tillerman. It's probably one of my favorite albums, Cat Stevens. And I just finally bought the big super box set that came out for that. I think it came out in 2020, and I finally picked that up. And that's got a 2020 remix of the album, a live 12-inch that came with it from like, I guess it's a live stuff from that same era. And then like a Blu-ray disc that I'm looking forward to watching. But yeah, that's the stuff that's been there now or that's on there now.
Yeah, that's the part that's crazy for me. Like I was like, dude, I used to work in a record store. Like it's not like this was, you know, an obscure thing for me, but I cannot tell you the last physical music that I've purchased because it's just not that's not the spot that I'm in. And but I'm darn well paying for everything. I still have all of my collection. I never really gave any of that away or sold any of it.
I say 90% of what I listen to is MP3s. It's just like,
Yeah,
throw
it's
something
easy.
on while I'm working, in the car or whatever.
Yeah, it's easy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's yeah, it's
Headphones on while walking the dog or whatever.
yeah, yeah. That's and the crazy thing is, like, we all walk around with a, you know, 20 years ago, not so much, but nowadays it's, portable MP3 player in your pocket, right? I mean, doesn't matter what you have, but you have access to everything. It's all through an app or it's all through
20,
whatever.
20 years ago, we probably still had that big book of CDs in the car.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. So, um, we've been going through and cleaning out our main TV cabinet and had a couple of loose discs, and I said, "Oh, I'll just go put those back in the garage." And that's exactly what they came out of, was a big book.
I still have that. I told you the first two CDs were Jethro Tull and Bat Out of Hell. I still have the Bat Out of Hell CD that was my dad's. I stole that from. Well, I stole that from. I borrowed that from him and never returned it. And Tom Petty's Greatest Hits, that was his, and that's lived in like every car I've ever had that had a CD player. The car I have now doesn't have a CD player in it anymore.
Yeah, mine doesn't
Yeah.
either. And my truck's, it's not that it's new either. It's a 16 that does not have a. It was one of those where it was like first generation of the Android Auto / Apple CarPlay.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where it goes off of. But I don't know. But no, dude, this has been fun. I figured we'd get into some different things here. That, like you said, the Rio and some of these things that we do. There's no way that we would have thought about.
Um, I mean, I also talking about subscriptions and stuff. On and off throughout the years, I've subscribed to Vinyl Me Please, a record of the month club kind of thing, and I think like I didn't subscribe to them for 2 years, and then they do like their own releases, and they did a Grateful Dead release last month, so I subscribed again, and then you can swap out your records. I don't know if you've ever heard of Daniel Johnston. He's like an outsider music guy.
I know that name.
Kurt Cobain like made him famous because he would wear shirts with his album artwork on it, and
Yeah, that name sounds so familiar.
it's a lot of people have covered his songs. He was I want to say he was autistic. He had something wrong with him.
Right,
He
right.
died recently, but they did a vinyl set of his greatest hits, which is what I'm getting this month, and I'm kind of looking forward to that because I haven't listened to him in a while yet. I'm like, well, this is on there. Let's pick this up, and it's kind of cool.
That's cool. No, you said real quick on the you said vinyl of the month. Have you found anything else through that's been like, ooh, this is pretty
Um,
awesome? Or
you know what? They sent me a Roots album one month, and I had never listened to the Roots before then. They go, these guys are pretty good, and they're from Philadelphia. That makes them even
yep,
better.
yep.
And trying to think what else. Missy Elliott. So they like I said, they mix things up, which is kind of cool. An awesome album. I forget the name of the guy now, and I feel bad for this, but it's um, Afro jazz. So it's jazz from Africa.
Huh.
And I like that's apparently it's a whole genre because I've actually picked up other records since then from other people that have done that. Like it's pretty good. Yeah.
Huh. That's pretty cool. Yeah. No, I have to one of these days. I'm gonna have to dive into one of those types of things because that's I, I I think that's fun because it's like you get exposed to something that it's like I'm never gonna dive into that, but you're almost kind of like, not to say in a way forced is probably the wrong way of saying it, but it's like I want to check this out because it's being physically sent to me.
Yeah. Well, that's
But,
I was talking about reggae earlier. Like I listened to it with the satellite radio, but I remember as a kid walking South Street, there were a couple of they were just Jamaican record stores, and I would never go into them because I didn't think I would be welcome in there. But they would be like blaring, reggae music out of the thing. And then just Jamaican Jerk Cut, which is also a really good Jamaican place that was on South Street. And then I started listening to like I thought reggae music was Bob Marley, and I had Bob Marley's greatest hits. Like, this is okay, but isn't. But then I started listening to like the other Wailers, like Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer, and I'm like, well, this is can get really good. Good. Um, and started by I picked up. I think I have most of the stuff Bunny Wailer did now. Peter Tosh and Max Romeo is another good one, and it's like you call it reggae, but you understand that inside that one genre, there's so many subgenres of music
Right.
that's when you start getting into it. It's like those people that tell you, I don't like beer. Beer tastes nasty to me. Well, like, have you tried a stout? Have you tried an ale? Like, there's a lot of different music. So you can't say that you don't like one genre because there's so many things inside of that thing that just give them a chance. Just because it's labeled as something doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to like it.